A peace agreement, negotiations in Geneva, and how the US and Europe envision a peace plan. I'll tell you everything that's known in this episode. I'm Solomia Vititska, and this is TSN. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, watch the broadcast, and be sure to comment on what you found most interesting. Here are a few of today's topics. A path to peace or just going in circles?
The goal was to address 28 points, or 26 depending on the version, and to try to narrow down the list of unresolved issues.
What agreements were reached in Geneva? He arrived before the rescuers did.
We couldn't help them at all. My wife and I just look at each other and we cry together, feeling completely helpless.
How Volodymyr Kolody from Ternopil rescued his neighbors from the flames after a Russian missile attack. Orange treats that don't cost a fortune.
You can buy tangerines for just 55 hryvnias per kilogram, it says, and the quality is the best.
What are the health benefits of tangerines and who should eat them with caution? At least 6 people have been injured in Donetsk region, including 2 children in Sloviansk. The enemy dropped 3 high-explosive aerial bombs on the city, one of which exploded near an apartment building. 2 girls sustained mine blast injuries and shrapnel wounds. Aged 13 and 15, they were injured along with an elderly woman and 2 men. In addition to residential buildings, a boiler house and railway infrastructure were damaged. Odessa region was also hit by drone attacks. The enemy targeted civilian port facilities and damaged equipment. A fire broke out on a moored vessel, but it was extinguished. The enemy has been attacking the Izmail district for 3 days in a row. The day before, they destroyed the international ferry complex. It has suspended operations for at least a week. 2 people were injured as a result of a Russian strike on Chernihiv. In the morning, the occupiers attacked the city with a drone. A private house was damaged and a fire broke out there. At night, the Russians used drones to strike the border area of Chernihiv region. In the village of Zhadove, a local fire department building was hit. It was a difficult night in Kharkiv. The Russians launched a massive drone attack on the city. There are dead and many wounded there. After a series of strikes, there were power outages and, in some places, heating disruptions. Electric transport is running on altered routes. Our Yulia Boyko will tell you more in detail. It's coming down right now. Just imagine, I can hear it. Around 9 in the evening, enemy drones began to move toward the city. 3 districts of Kharkiv were attacked by a swarm. Within half an hour, 15 explosions sounded, one after another. The most destruction was in the Shevchenkivsky district. Here, Shaheds deliberately targeted residential buildings. People say that to save themselves, they ran out of their burning homes with only what they had on.
My grandson, I'm scared for him. He's terrified. They hit once, then hit again. And at night, I can't sleep. Of course, it's scary, such things happening. Well, thank God we're alive.
It is known that 17 people were injured. Among them are 2 children, a 12-year-old boy who was cut by glass and an 11-year-old girl. She has a severe stress reaction. 2 men were also taken to the hospital. They are in a moderate condition. 4 civilians died, 3 women and 1 man. One of the women who died was in the kitchen at the moment of the strike. Her children managed to escape from the house just seconds before the Shahed hit.
They are a wonderful family. Unfortunately, the mother died. Honestly, it's terrible because yesterday the children were barely conscious. The woman's name was Irina. It just happened that now the children are left without their mother.
After the strike on energy facilities, the city experienced disruptions with electricity, water, and heating. Due to the lack of power, trams and trolley buses partially changed their routes. Some of the networks have already been restored. Repairs are still ongoing at several locations.
At this time, we have a preliminary count of 12 Shahed drone strikes. Unfortunately, we have casualties and damaged transformer substations. Private residential houses, broken windows, and a multi-story building were affected.
Since last night, rescuers, utility services, and volunteers have been working at the sites of the strikes. They are clearing the rubble and sealing up damaged houses and windows. In Ternopil, search and rescue operations at the sites of Russian missile strikes have been completed. They lasted for 4 days. The enemy struck the city on November 19th. 33 people were killed, including children. Another 94 were injured. 6 city residents are also considered missing. These are 2 men, 3 women, and a small child. The process of identifying a body of which only fragments were found is ongoing as a result of the attack. One 9-story apartment building was completely destroyed, and in another, 2 entrances burned down. Both damaged buildings are located near an industrial facility that was also hit. Experts say that in this way, the Russians wanted to distract the state emergency service.
At this point, we are coming to the conclusion that the hits on the residential buildings on Stu Street and 15 Kvitnya Street were not accidental. These were deliberately chosen targets by Russia to prevent us from extinguishing the fire at the industrial facility. Therefore, the strike was carried out on targets where many people were present.
Destruction and capture of Russians, as well as the evacuation of Ukrainian unit fighters. Operators of the 3rd Special Operations Forces Regiment showed footage of their work near Pokrovsk. In these shots, you can see how they storm enemy positions, surround them, and take prisoners to replenish the exchange fund. And here, they are already combing through the tree lines, evacuating wounded infantrymen with the help of ground robotic systems and heading to their deployment location. According to the General Staff, the Pokrovsk direction remains one of the hottest spots. Over the course of the day, more than 60 attacks had to be repelled there, and nearly 30 assaults took place in the Kostyantinivka area, specifically near Shcherbinivka, Rusinny Yar, Yablunivka, and Sofiivka. The Russians have also become more active in the northern Slobodansky and Kursk directions, where they used not only personnel but also struck with guided aerial bombs from aircraft. It is also tense near Huliaipol in the Zaporizhzhia region. At least 17 attacks were repelled. Some Russian social media claim that soldiers from North Korea have allegedly arrived in this area to reinforce the occupying army after 2 months of training. However, there is no official confirmation. Overall, the General Staff has counted 191 combat engagements along the entire front line so far. The US-Russia peace plan in its previous form with 28 points no longer exists, according to Alexander Bevz, a member of the Ukrainian delegation in Geneva. According to the official, some points of the plan were removed, others were changed, and none of the Ukrainian side's comments were left without a response. The Financial Times reports that instead of 28 provisions, the document now consists of 19. Which specific points were removed is still unknown. The Ukrainian delegation is expected to arrive in Kyiv from Geneva today and report to Volodymyr Zelensky on the results of the negotiations. It is known that Europeans helped to revise the peace plan, and it was they who prepared counter-proposals and sent national security advisors to meet with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio to discuss this. Meanwhile, in Moscow, they are already rushing to declare that the European and Ukrainian revisions do not suit them and insist on the original version with 28 points. Putin's aide, Yuri Ushakov, noted that they were given the American plan to review, but no official discussion about it has taken place. Accordingly, it will undergo further revisions. The American publication The Washington Post learned that Donald Trump did not delve into the details of the peace plan. One of the officials in the American administration said that there was real chaos in the White House and in certain departments because of this issue. And although, according to the publication, the Ukrainians were given some room for negotiations, the Trump team made it clear that they wanted to resolve this issue as quickly as possible.
The goal was to take 28 points, or 26 depending on the version, which kept changing, and try to narrow down the list of unresolved issues. And today, we have achieved this to a very significant extent. Of course, like any final agreement, all of this must be approved by the presidents.
The European Union is offering its own version of a plan to end the war in Ukraine, or more precisely, a rewrite of the American one with 28 points. The European counter-proposal was published by Reuters and The Telegraph. Which points are fundamental for Europe? And is there a chance that Washington will take them into account? Our correspondent in Brussels, Zoriana Stepanenko, will tell us more.
The initial version of the so-called American-Russian plan alarmed Europe, as it had no knowledge of its development. Many points were unacceptable for Kyiv and its partners, but the plan is changing practically in real time. And after the negotiations in Geneva, where representatives of the European Union were given a seat at the table, there was a certain sense of relief here. It seems that Europe is being heard. Sources in EU diplomatic circles expressed optimism to Radio Svoboda. And in the European Commission, whose representative was also in Switzerland, progress was confirmed.
Europe's active and coordinated participation has led to constructive progress in the negotiations on a peace plan for Ukraine in recent hours. The central role of the EU in ensuring a lasting and just peace for Ukraine must be fully reflected in any plan that deserves to be trusted. There is still much to be done, and we are ready to contribute our part.
Further contributions were discussed today by EU leaders in a hybrid format. The President of the European Council urgently convened them for a discussion. More than a third of the participants were present in person as they were attending another event. The others joined online, but all 27 leaders were present, including Viktor Orban, whose foreign minister had already suggested that Europe support the initial version of the plan. However, in summing up the conversation, many EU leaders spoke of unity, and the President of the European Council pointed out issues that cannot be resolved without the European Union.
We welcome this step forward, and some issues still need to be addressed. But the direction is positive. It is also clear that issues directly concerning the EU, such as sanctions, enlargement or asset freezes, require the full participation and decision of the European Union.
Ursula von der Leyen outlined the so-called red lines for the European Union. According to her, Ukraine's borders must not be changed by force, and the size of the armed forces should not be reduced in such a way as to make Ukraine vulnerable to further possible attacks. And in general, the President of the European Commission added today decisions about its army should be made in Kyiv. Chancellor Merz called the 28-point plan a basis for developing a document acceptable to everyone and said that the US president is open to this. The leaders held phone calls. However, the head of the German government expressed doubt that they would manage to do this by Thursday, the deadline set for Kyiv by Trump.
Ukraine's interests are also Europe's common interests, and we want to defend them together in the long term. Ukraine must not be forced to make unilateral territorial concessions. Ukraine should continue to have the ability to effectively defend itself against aggression, and for that, it needs a strong army and reliable security guarantees.
Western media have learned about Europe's counter-proposals. According to these, in territorial negotiations, it is proposed to start from the current line of contact rather than, so to speak, handing over Ukraine's eastern lands to Russia from the outset. Europe also wants to amend the paragraph about NATO and state that Ukraine's possible accession depends on consensus among the allies, which is currently lacking. It also proposes a less strict limitation on the size of the armed forces, not 600,000 but up to 800,000 in peacetime. The lifting of sanctions would be gradual. The clause about American profits from Ukraine's reconstruction has also been removed. However, our sources in EU diplomatic circles claim that there is no alternative plan. Obviously, the information will continue to change in real time as negotiations proceed and their outcomes become clear. From Brussels, Zoriana Stepanenko, Marek Hajduk, Radio Liberty, especially for TSN 1+1.
Do you think we are getting closer to a ceasefire, perhaps even to lasting peace? Share your thoughts in the comments below this broadcast on YouTube. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Meanwhile, I will continue with the TSN broadcast. A shooting at a school. This happened in Lviv, right in the schoolyard. The fight was caught on video by witnesses. Later, it became known that it was the parents of students who fought, and one of them had a traumatic pistol. Marichka Kuzik will tell you more about children's quarrels and how they continue among adults.
How do gunshots ring out from the schoolyard? You can hear it in this video that's spreading online. The Department of Education has already reported that the shooter was a third grader's father. He aimed at another student's father, and this was preceded by a call to the principal. The head of the school invited the parents of the students who had been having regular conflicts for a conversation. The last straw was a fight between the children.
Considering that the boy who was beaten had previously been involved in several conflicts within the class, other concerned parents also came.
But who could have known that a children's scuffle would escalate into an adult shootout? The parents of the students met on the street. They tried to figure out why one of the students was constantly breaking the rules. The discussion got too heated until one of the parents pulled out a weapon.
At first it was between the mothers, and then one of the fathers stepped in and got involved. Later the father, who had been in the office, also came outside. And due to the conflict between the two men, one of them had this weapon with him and used it. There were 4 shots fired.
The school safety officer tried to break up the fight between the men. Police and an ambulance arrived at the scene. They are still investigating where the shooter got the weapon and whether he had a permit for it.
One man was inflicting bodily harm, and in response, the other man pulled out a traumatic weapon and fired it. A criminal case has been opened under Part 4 of Article 296 for hooliganism.
The penalty for this is up to 7 years in prison. The school principal and parents are not commenting at this time. The institution is still recovering from what happened. Meanwhile, doctors at the hospital are examining the 2 injured individuals. These are the parents of the students, one of whom has a gunshot wound.
The patient was immediately taken to the operating room where surgery was performed. Currently, the patient has been diagnosed with a blind gunshot wound to the thigh and hand, as well as to the thigh muscle and the anterior abdominal wall.
None of the students or school staff were injured. Marichka Kuzik, Andriy Popovich, Lviv, TSN 1+1.
Free satellite connection right on your smartphone. Today, Ukraine became the first in Europe and the 6th in the world to launch the Starlink Direct to CELL technology in test mode. And on the very first day, 200,000 users registered on the network and sent over 16,000 SMS messages. This was reported by Kyivstar CEO Oleksandr Komarov during the launch presentation. He explained that smartphones can only see the satellite directly from the open sky. Thanks to this technology, the phone connects directly to a base station in space, which means there will be connectivity even in places where there are no towers on the ground and accordingly no mobile coverage. So when the usual network disappears, phones that support 4G and LTE will automatically switch to Starlink, such as during a blackout, or in combat zones in the highlands of the Carpathians or on remote roads. However, for now, only owners of phones on the Kyivstar network running the Android operating system can use the service. This only concerns the exchange of SMS messages. For iPhones, the network may become available by the end of the year. And starting next year, voice messages will be added as well.
If you find yourself outside the coverage area of the Kyivstar network or even other mobile operators working in Ukraine, since we currently have national roaming, your phone will automatically connect to the Kyivstar network via Starlink. And within this network, at the first stage, you will be able to send and receive SMS messages. At the second stage, it will already be broadband mobile communication.
A Ukrainian refugee has won the Emperor's Cup. 21-year-old Danilo Yavusishin from Vinnytsia won at an elite sumo tournament in Japan. He moved to Ukraine of the Rising Sun in 2022 after the start of the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine. During this time, he made a professional career as a sumo wrestler in Japan, where he is now known under the name Aonishiki. Danilo Stavko, the first Ukrainian to win the prestigious Emperor of Japan Cup and the first European in 8 years to do so. A native of Vinnytsia, he achieved 12 victories and only 3 defeats during the tournament and then won the championship playoff against the reigning grand champion of the competition. Special attention on social media was drawn to the size of the cup that was presented to the Ukrainian after the final.